First, we got NDP MP Johns, and he's got questions for the border security. And then there's up Conservative MP Genuous, and he's got some questions regarding point of privilege. It gets voted
Cameron
down.
says Ming directed him to, quote, look into a specific domain within HR using AI, end quote. He says, quote, I found a company in Montreal and connected with GC Strategies who sought options to move something forward, end quote. That company was Bottler AI. So what we have here is a government official saying they clearly identified a solution, but they chose to bring in a middle person to profit off it first. We've seen the direct message that GC Strategies sent to Bottler on LinkedIn. That's not professional headhunting that the government can't do itself. It really seems that GC Strategies was brought in as a middle person for no reason at all, except to profit off a taxpayer contract, a taxpayer paid contract. And unless we see evidence to the contrary, that's what this shows. So Ms. O'Gorman, do you believe this is acceptable? And with many more eyes on CBSA's procurements right now, have you found other cases where this has happened? And what is your plan to figure out whether this is happening in other cases?
Well, note your comment about unless other information comes to the fore. But to your question, I don't agree that that was proper procurement. It was not an unsolicited proposal. The rules allow for prime contractors to sub, and as this committee has heard and asked about, subcontract. It's not for CBSA or a department to try and manage and develop those subcontracts. Those are business decisions between entities in the course of a procurement. So what I have seen, based on the documents that you're referring to, CBSA's involvement in how those contracts would come together is not usual. Looking at other options, CBSA presumably could have put out an RFP for its requirements. It could have looked to justify a sole source. It could have used supply arrangements and pre-qualified. So there were other options. It's not clear to me that what was happening was appropriate. In fact, it appears to be inappropriate. And the spirit of the supply arrangements and standing offers is not to retrofit products through them.
Would this be your rationale for the suspensions then?
The suspensions of the companies?
No, the employees.
I didn't suspend the employees.
Okay. It's my understanding that is Mr. McDonald not suspended?
So neither Mr. McDonald nor Mr. Utano work for the CBSA. I have no authority over them. Their deputy heads have taken action.
Okay. Understanding that, what's your plan to figure out whether this is happening in other cases? Have you looked to see if this is taking place in more than this instance?
So twofold. I have the investigation underway, and the investigation is going to canvass all of those issues. And I have a committee set up that's looking at every contract and asking the questions and trying to understand before any approvals are given.
Okay, now that you've got this committee working, has the committee come back to you already and flagged other contracts that are of concern?
So the committee is forward-looking. We are reviewing documents relating to contracts on ArriveCan and the billing around that. To your question, I have the internal investigation that will be canvassing how CBSA was engaging with contractors during this period, not limited to Bottler GC Strategies. So I look forward to those conclusions. I look forward to...
When do we expect to have those conclusions? I mean, this could run for years, right? We don't want that. We want to make sure that we get results. That's what this committee wants.
I'm very impatient. I need to make sure I don't translate that impatience into undue pressure. I'm trying to preserve the integrity of the investigation. I'm impatient, and I hope that everybody involved will participate so that we can wrap it up as soon as possible. I would hesitate to give it.
This is a very big point of privilege. It's convoluted about the ArriveCan, but it's interesting. Check it out.
Mr. Generous.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to address a couple things that are happening. Yeah. So first of all, we have this kind of manufactured disagreement between two coalition partners here. If these issues around small business are priorities for the NDP, they should have put these things forward as part of their coalition deal. It would be a welcome change if this government started paying attention to the concerns of small businesses, because we know that small businesses have been treated absolutely brutally under this government. The disdain this government has shown, going back to calling small businesses tax cheats, the Prime Minister's own words, in fact, suggesting that many small businesses are simply his words, of course. He claimed that they are in many cases wealthy Canadians trying to avoid taxes. He knows a thing or two about wealthy Canadians trying to avoid taxes normally, but in this case, he's of course dead wrong. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy, and small businesses, taxpayers, Canadians of all backgrounds have experienced the pain associated with the radical economic agenda of the NDP liberal government. I of course have a great deal to say on that subject, but I would also add that the proposal from Mr. Sousa to require a government response to this report is not about actually getting a government response. It's about inserting a 120-day delay before this issue can be considered by the House in a concurrence motion, which Mr. Sousa or whoever made this recommendation to him, of course, knows. So the idea that there's some urgency, that we have to pass this today, well, this committee voting on this motion today is not going to impact the timeline because look, if the government was going to extend it, the government would need to extend it. The government has, by all indication, chosen not to do it. This is not a government that listens to small business. The best we could hope for through this process would be that this would be reported to the House. The subsequent effect of it being reported to the House it wouldn't be reported to the House until substantially after the deadline, and then certainly if Mr. Sousa is successful with his amendment, the earliest time the House could pronounce itself on this matter would be months and months from now. And this is being done at a time that has limited, unfortunately, our ability to ask critical questions to very senior public servants who are, needless to say, under a cloud of significant suspicion. I'm happy to debate this government's economic agenda and how poorly they've treated small businesses, but we have an urgent matter related to the ArriveCan situation. An urgent matter that follows not only $54 million spent on an app and RCMP investigating some of the related contractors, middlemen receiving large amounts of money for no work, but senior public servants accusing each other of lying and of and apparent retaliation for testimony given at parliamentary committees. In that vein, Chair, I did want to just identify the fact that I think it is time, as part of these hearings, that we hear from ministers. I know I can't move a motion, and I don't think you need a motion for that, but I think significant questions have been raised in this discussion among public servants that need to be answered by ministers. So I hope you would choose at some point soon to invite the Minister of Public Safety, the Minister of Treasury Board, and the Minister for Procurement to appear before the committee and help us unravel some of the contradictions we've heard among senior public servants, and also find out to what extent they have been privy to the conversations around ArriveCan, but also some of the retaliatory actions taken against public servants. I also hope at some point we could also hear from the minister at the time, Mr. Mendicino. Chair, and I also I've been reflecting on this over the course of this hearing, and I also related to the issues around retaliation against public servants. I would like to raise a question of privilege, and this question of privilege. So you can advise me on the appropriate procedure around this, Chair. But my view is that It is a critical privilege of committees and of parliamentarians to be able to call witnesses, hear from witnesses, and for those witnesses to be able to present their information without being subject to retaliation and intimidation. When witnesses are subject to retaliation and intimidation, it limits the rights and privileges of committees because it constrains our ability to actually hear and receive accurate and truthful testimony. And it's clear to me from the series of events we have seen that if not direct intentional retaliation, there certainly is a strong appearance of retaliation, which will cast a chill on the ability of this committee to hear from public servants. We want to be able to have public servants come before the committee and simply tell us what they're hearing. And I think now that is going to be constrained as a result of the fact that senior public servants have retaliated against those that have given direct and frank testimony. So I think this is a matter that does touch on privilege of members of Parliament. So I wanted to put that on the record as well.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis. Mr. Johns, really quick, please.
I think if Mr. Genuis is fine, I'm fine.
Thanks. Mr. Genuis has raised a question of privilege. Privilege issues have to take precedence, and unfortunately it does adjourn the debate. We will take up this motion. Let me finish. We will take up this motion on the amendment by Mr. Sousa at our next meeting, but privilege issues have to take precedence.
Sure, just point of order. I mean, if the matter of privilege is dealt with, then we
can get back.
Then we go back to it. Yeah, that's
this is. Yeah. We will resume.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll resume it after on Mr. Sousa's amendment after we've dealt with the issue of privilege, which has to take precedence. Let me just finish, Mr. Johns, and I will go to you. But Mr. Genuis has raised the question of privilege, House of Commons procedure and practice, third edition.
Well, what do you think about this? Leave your comments down below, like, subscribe, and have a great day. And this is going to be an exciting 2024 for politics.